myself. I didn't know it was called that, but I was talking to a lot of our state leaders, and I said, look, if there's one issue right now over the next 9 to 12 months that's top of mind for you, that's your biggest concern, keeps you up at night, every single one of them said to me, Chris, it's workforce. It's workforce. It's workforce. It's workforce. Because if we don't have the people working, we're losing out on productivity, lowering our GDP. And so, staying with us, he is the regional outreach director for the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, Ron Wirtz. We've been talking about this workforce issue, and it's really on the top of mind for so many business owners. And Ron, you've been with the Federal Reserve now for I think it's 23 years. You've seen this situation for quite some time. I'm just curious, based on your experience, all the data that you see, if you had a magic wand, like what would you do if you were king for a day? What would you do to solve this workforce problem?
Oh boy. Well, unfortunately, I don't think a magic wand would probably solve it because it comes from a number of areas. And first, let me say, I think your legislators are pretty smart people because I think I would even extend that. I would extend the time frame on that in terms of it's not 9 to 12 months whether or not this is a problem. This is going to be a problem potentially for 5, 10, 15 years. And some of it is the reasons the work labor force is such a problem right now is it's kind of a demographic issue. We know that baby boomers were going to be leaving the labor force. Um, so you have much slower labor force population than when you had in the 90s. You had really strong labor force participation basically across the country, also in the upper Midwest states. Since 2000, roughly, you've seen a much slower population growth. Now, not in North Dakota because of the oil boom, but if you looked at Minnesota and the rural areas probably also of North Dakota, you really have seen this slowdown in population growth, and population and labor force are involved are related. The other thing you have is that you've had a slowly declining labor force participation rate. So if you go back to roughly 2000, in North Dakota, I believe it was about 70%, but really across all the states in the U.S., you saw it from wherever it was in the 90s or in 2000 roughly. It has been very slowly trundling lower. And right now, then you had the pandemic, and it went a point or two, depending on which state, a point or two lower than that. And it's starting to build up, but it has not even come back to pre-pandemic levels. So there's lots of things to unwrap in terms of labor force and workforce. What we are hearing is that, not only are we seeing more retirements, there's very often a bounce back period for a lot of retired people, and some of the evidence suggests that those people that retired decided more of them decided to stay retired, and that's a kind of a problem because one of the things that kind of the uh, one of the good things coming out of the baby boom generation retiring is that as a work group, they were working more than their parents did at the same age. So we were seeing fairly strong growth in workers over 65. That is now decline. That is now pulled back fairly significantly. We are also seeing bounce back. During the pandemic, we saw um, labor force participation suffer more from women because they were more likely to be responsible for childcare and other things. That's starting to bounce back, but still isn't back where it was. So there really are a lot of things that are involved in terms of where we are in terms of workforce. The first thing I would say, though, it's a numbers issue. We simply aren't growing our populations as we were before. Part of that is also related to our immigration.
If you're just joining us, Ron Wirtz, he's the regional outreach director for the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, does an outstanding job going within our communities and, as he said, kind of pulse polling different business owners and people and getting data that we can then apply, hopefully, to our own communities to make an impact. I'm curious, maybe you don't want to, single out any businesses, but has there been any models that you found or any business owners you've spoken with and you said, hey, what's working for you when it
Yeah,
comes to hiring? Are there any suggestions you have for
sure.
businesses to say, hey, we found that this really works?
I'm going to take one quick step back and then I will get to that question very directly. So, one of the things we are not sure of is what our business is doing collectively. We do know there's lots of anecdotes that lots of businesses are doing lots of different things. What we don't really know is what kind of market penetration are we having for different kinds of things. The, we've started asking that question actually, and the first thing that pops out is businesses are raising wages. You almost can't not raise wages when there is such demand for labor, because people are going to move for wages. Um, but that is not the only thing. They are doing a laundry list of other things. The first thing that
Can
we're seeing,
I
first
just
thing that,
comment on that real quick, Ron? Because I
yeah,
got a great
please.
answer for you. I don't know how old you are, but I was recently at an event and University of Mary was there. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They're out of Bismarck, right? And So this woman does a lot of great work with students and helps them get into the workforce. And
Yeah,
I just said, I'm curious, like, what's kind of the biggest challenge or issue you're facing right now with some of these young people and they're getting out
yeah.
in the workforce? She said to me, Ron, she goes, Chris, what's amazing? These people won't even give people the time of day if there's not at least a $15,000 signing bonus.
I haven't heard that one. I have heard a lot of demands, very definitely, and I think employers we get lots of stories. Maybe not quite to that degree, but we get a lot of stories about employers um, seeing things that they haven't seen before. I think what we have to start maybe grasping a little bit more is because of that labor shortage, labor has leverage and they are likely to have leverage. And I don't think we can blame workers for exercising that leverage. That's how markets are supposed to work. And so, from that standpoint, what getting back to your question, what I would say is the businesses that are working to meet the worker demands is maybe a little bit too loaded, but essentially creating an environment, whether it's wages, benefits, flexibility, work office environment, those are the businesses that are winning, period. End of discussion. Now, not everyone can necessarily raise wages a lot, or maybe they are in an environment like a construction site that maybe is um, less attractive to certain workers. So, certain businesses are going to have a smaller labor pool to start, but it's those that are thinking out of the box and not thinking about what it was like to hire 10 years ago or 15 years ago. They have to think, what is it like to hire now? And how am I going to get the labor that I need? And really sympathize with employers because it's hard enough, if you're a widget manufacturer, it's hard enough just getting the widgets out the door every day. There's lots of business is complicated. And I think businesses got used to not having to worry about labor like they would supply chains or costs or things like that. And now it's kind of top of mind. And that's very difficult. That's a difficult problem for businesses to solve because humans are difficult people, it's one thing, you turn a button, and gas goes to an engine and it starts. People aren't like that, unfortunately. And so it is a very workforce is a very, very difficult issue. And the businesses that are really working on it as a problem are the ones that seem to succeed in terms of the ones that I talk to.
And then you see all these businesses obviously driving towards, automation. And what does that mean for the labor force
hmm
at some point? And I've got 60 seconds, sir. I want to give you the last word. What else you want to share? What should we know?
What should we know? Keep hiring out there, businesses that are listening. It really is as difficult as it is what is going to keep our economy running. During this period of
Ron,
inflation, yes,
I don't
sir.
mean to interrupt you, so I really apologize. But what if a business owner hears you? They're like, "Hey, Ron, I would love to, but I can't get access to capital when rates are at 4 or 5%. Can you lower the rates back so I can get access to capital? And then I'll
Well,
hire more
the only
people."
thing I would come back with, Chris, is then do you want to keep inflation high? And that's a really difficult situation. And I don't want to say difficult situation for the Fed. We have our job. We're going to try to do it. We understand that is going to create some pain potentially for certain kinds of businesses. And unfortunately, we wish we could set interest rates, more strategically. Maybe for this sector versus that sector, or that business for or even that state. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
interest rates don't work that way. So I really just wish all of your businesses, frankly, the resiliency that we've seen over the last 2.5 years has just been amazing, and we
it
hope that
is.
resiliency can continue.
And I hope I'm just having fun with you. Put my
Sure.
business owner hat on and go, yeah, I'd love to if you can just give me more
Yeah,
access to
I
capital.
understand.
So,
That's fair.
Ron Wirtz, the regional outreach director with the Minneapolis Federal Reserve. Great, great stuff. I really, really appreciate the time and the insight. Look forward to having you back, Ron.